wonderful world of gaming is full of stories that bring light, joy, and that comfy, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, there are games out there that are, well, incredibly dark, but there are just as many wholesome titles out there too. But even those wholesome games can have a darkness to them, and sometimes that darkness takes the form of urban legends.
Yes, just like the real four-dimensional world we unfortunately find ourselves in at the moment, there are urban legends in gaming that you'd probably rather not know about. Unluckily for you, we here at Team Eurogamer have rounded up the 12 most famous /
creepiest urban legends for you to dive down rabbit holes with. You're welcome / we're sorry. Anyway, let's get started.
American football's a weird sport, isn't it? I mean, why is it even called football when the players spend most of the time holding their balls in their hands? And hell, American footballs aren't even the same shape as regular footballs. It makes no sense. If anything, it should really be called American rugby, or if you're gonna be really literal, American handy holdy eggs or something.
But that's not the weirdest thing about American football, because, thanks to the Madden NFL series of games, it's also cursed. The imaginatively named Madden Curse is a supposed curse that has affected 16 out of the 22 players who've been lucky, or in this case unlucky enough, to have appeared on the cover of a Madden video game. This curse doesn't manifest itself instantly, but what it essentially does is slowly turn previously prime players into accident-prone injury magnets over the course of the season following their appearance on the box. For example, Minnesota Vikings quarterback Dante Culpepper, who appeared on the cover for Madden NFL 2002, suffered a season-ending back injury after 11 games. Michael Vick, quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons and cover star for Madden NFL 2004, suffered a fractured right tibia 5 days after the game was released, and the Seahawks' Sean Alexander fractured the 4th metatarsal in his foot soon after he was on the cover of Madden NFL 2007. This curse doesn't always hit its mark though, as a small number of cover stars such as Madden NFL 2010's Larry Fitzgerald and Madden NFL 2018's Tom Brady have both escaped its season-ending grasp. That's lucky for them, sure, but for those that the curse is claimed, well, this inconsistency must be maddening.
Get it? Maddening? Nice. That one's going to really annoy Zoe.
Come on, you must have heard of this one.
Herobrine is perhaps the most famous gaming urban legend there is, and he's been around for a decade and somehow still creeps me the hell out with those dead eyes of his. The story is he appeared in someone's single-player,
emphasis on single-player,
version of the game without a name tag above his blocky body and ran off into the fog when he was chased. Never appearing out of the fog in the clear light of day or the torchlight of night, Herobrine left man-made features in his wake. And this player isn't alone in meeting Herobrine.
Since then, people have been trying to come up with explanations about who or what Herobrine actually is. The ghost of the creator of Minecraft's dead brother, a virus, a trick put in by the devs, theories abound.
Mojang tried their damnedest to get rid of him too, with repetitive patch notes documenting that devs removed Herobrine from the game. Herobrine is probably just an urban legend with nothing more to it than a couple of creepypasta-ish accounts. But if you desire this spectre to appear in your game and don't want to be perpetually peering into the fog, there is a mod you can download to summon Herobrine into the game.
I mean, if you want to bring that quite literally damned being on yourself, then on your own head be it, friend.
So Bendrowned is like the granddaddy of all gaming urban legends, and one that likely a lot of you have heard before. But you know, it's always a good story, so buckle in. The story goes that in 2010, a profile Jad Usable, real name Alex Hall, began posting about his unsettling experiences with an old N64 cartridge of Majora's Mask on an internet forum, uploading some short gameplay capture clips to substantiate his claims. These claims were that he'd bought this old, mislabeled cartridge at a yard sale, but upon booting the game up, began experiencing increasingly bizarre occurrences. Songs playing in reverse, statues following the player around Clocktown, a hovering skull kid, save files renaming themselves into vague threats, and the name of a dead boy. The story eventually makes it out of the game too, as Jad Usable claims that the malevolent spirit of Ben started haunting the computer that he'd used to capture the gameplay, going so far as to communicate with him via chatbot. It all takes place over the course of a few days, and in the end, we are invited to believe that Ben may have killed off Jad Usable entirely. The whole story is a multi-chapter read, and it can all be found on the internet, so look it up if you haven't already, and if you don't mind a potentially sleepless night as the face of the happy mask salesman lives rent-free in your head. Interestingly, Alex Hall has been updating the Bendrowned story arc as recently as 2020. Its expanded universe all centers around a cult called the Moon Children, and there's some pretty intricate lore to sift through. One to fall into an internet late-night rabbit hole, we think.
Pokemon is a treasure trove when it comes to urban legends and creepiness. A haunted, cursed treasure trove. There's 3 urban legends worth mentioning here, so let's start with the most well-known one, Lavender Town.
It might sound like it smells nice, with all the threat of a small cotton bag filled with dried lavender put on your pillow at your nana's house, but in reality, it's quite the opposite. Allegedly, the music being played in Lavender Town makes people commit suicide, with this rumoured condition even having its own name, Lavender Town Syndrome.
Like all good urban legends, it starts on creepypasta, where a user alleges that 100 Japanese children died in 1996 after hearing the Lavender Town music. Others got, apparently, nosebleeds, headaches, or suffered from mood swings. There's no solid basis for this urban legend and no record of 100 Japanese kids dying, even if you find the images of that weird spectrogram music. But some people allege that Nintendo has covered the whole thing up with the help of the Japanese government. Moving swiftly on from conspiracy theories to something that actually has a feasible explanation, let's go from deaths to talking about ghosts.
A ghost girl pops up in the background for literally a split second in 2014's Pokemon Alpha Ruby and Omega Sapphire.
This spirit, or who we assume to be a spirit, appears behind Phoebe of the Elite Four, who, get this, specialises in ghost Pokemon. Spookily, after she appears behind Phoebe, she appears right beside you. Ugh, someone just walked over my grave. Theories abound about who this girl is, whether she's one of Phoebe's dead relatives, an illusion cast by a Pokemon, or even Phoebe's dead daughter, Cheery.
But Nintendo have never confirmed who it is exactly, so I guess I'll just be lying awake at night thinking about this. Thanks, Nintendo.
An urban legend that emerged around the year 2000, the story behind Polybius is a bit of a creepy one, mainly because it fed off the idea that no one could definitively prove whether the eponymous game in question ever officially existed. The legend went that around 1981, mysterious cabinets containing this previously unheard of game began popping up in arcades around Portland, Oregon. Playing it would supposedly induce addictive or psychoactive behaviours in arcade clientele, after which mysterious men in black were said to turn up at those arcades, data mining the machines or interrogating those players who frequented them. This all went to suggest that Polybius was no mere game, but instead that it was actually a government-run mind control experiment developed by the CIA, who were quietly keeping tabs behind the scenes. Players were said to suffer from, among other things, amnesia, insomnia, and hallucinations. But then, no more than a month after its supposed release in 1981, all the cabinets containing Polybius disappeared without a trace. It's safe to say that none of these rumours were ever verified, but the jury is still out as to whether the urban legend arose out of genuine paranoia over arcades, government bodies, and technology in general in the 1980s, or whether it was a more recent, cynical creation of the internet age and early gaming forums trying to drive extra traffic to their sites through a good old-fashioned conspiracy theory. Either way, Polybius lives on through subsequent actual games that were named in honour of it, and the abiding thought that this entire urban legend is not at all that far-fetched to be believed.
Video game urban legends don't come any bigger or footier than this next one, because of course I'm about to tell you all about GTA San Andreas' Bigfoot.
The hunt for this legendary beast has been the subject of internet debate since San Andreas' release in about 2004. It's one of the most discussed video game legends of all time, and even though its existence in the game has been debunked multiple times by Rockstar, it still captures people's attention thanks to an imaginative modding community and some overly enthusiastic internet rumour mills. According to early accounts, San Andreas' Bigfoot could be found roaming the wooded areas of the game, and these stories were soon backed up by vague screenshots of distant figures hiding within the trees. Sadly, these images were mainly found to be the work of fame-hungry modders who were desperate to cash in on the buzz, and even now, 15 years after its release, none of those accounts have ever proven to be true. But in honour of the community's love for the legend, Rockstar did add the beast to GTA 5 in the form of a side mission called The Last One, and it even gave players control over Old Tremendous Toes if they managed to find and chow down on 7 special golden peyote plants. But that's not all, as there was even a cheeky nod to San An Sasquatch in Red Dead Redemption's Undead Nightmare DLC, where if the player managed to find and kill Bigfoot, they would earn the achievement 6 years in the making, which was a reference to the length of time between the release of San Andreas and 2010's Red Dead Redemption.
So, will Bigfoot appear in any future Rockstar games, I wonder? Or has the developer finally had its fill of the beast? I guess all we can do for now is Sasquatch this space to find out.
Upside down sinners wow. What?
Nightmare springs to mind when trying to decide how to explain this particular urban legend from World of Warcraft. We start this hellish descent by players glitching into the Karazhan Crypt, an abandoned zone.
Never mind that the only way players could get in was by dying and then glitching in as a ghost, because that's too fitting. No.
Inside there are rooms named things like the Slough of Despair and the Pit of Criminals, which are one hell of a dark turn even for World of Warcraft. But the room we're concerned with is called the Upside Down Sinners, and you can guess what that's filled with. Bodies of sinners are hung upside down from the ceiling by meat hooks. Theories theorise that the whole instance was abandoned because it was way too sinister for World of Warcraft and would have increased the game's maturity rating. Or, if you go deeper into the lore, that the Room of the Upside Down Sinners is where the failed apprentices of Medivh, the last guardian of Tirisfal, were sent after they were driven insane by Medivh's experiments.
Whatever the reason for this horrific room, it exists, and I'd like to say a big no thank you to ever going there. Thanks.
Okay, so you thought the previous entries in this list were good? Well, wait until you get a load of this next one, because it will blow you away. Quite literally, in fact.
Jonathan Blow's Braid might not be somewhere you'd expect to find a dark urban legend, and to be honest with you, this one is a little bit more of a theory than an urban legend, but still, it is pretty dark because, if the theorists are to be believed, pretty much the entire game is an allegory for the guilt suffered by the creator of the atomic bomb. Blow himself has neither confirmed nor denied this theory, instead just saying that there is more than one interpretation of the story, but many people believe that the princess in the game actually represents the atomic bomb, and Tim, the protagonist, is actually a scientist who was heavily involved in its development. Oh, and all the time reversal in the game? That's Tim's unconscious desire to reverse the irreversible after the deployment and detonation of said bomb. But there are more clues to support this theory, and this time they're less obscure and they can be found within the text that's hidden in the game's epilogue. Specifically, the paragraph that reads, "She stood tall and majestic. She radiated fury. She shouted, 'Who has disturbed me?' But then, anger expelled, she felt the sadness beneath. She let her breath fall softly, like a sigh, like ashes floating gently on the wind. She couldn't understand why he chose to flirt so closely with the death of the world." The most concrete piece of evidence of all, though, has to be these short lines of text which read, "Someone near him said, 'It worked.' Someone else said, 'Now we are all sons of bitches.'" These words are a famous quotation from Kenneth Tompkins Bainbridge, the director of the Manhattan Project's Trinity nuclear test, who uttered them directly after the first successful detonation of an atom bomb. Dark.
But honestly, the biggest clue of all has been in front of us all along. I mean, come on, Jonathan Blow?
Now, to be honest, I consider this one less an urban legend and more a pretty compelling way to make sense of a lot of bizarre events in an otherwise straightforward-ish game. The story goes that Squall Leonhardt, the protagonist behind Final Fantasy VIII, actually dies at the end of what would have been Disc 1 on the original PlayStation. At that point in the story, the party face off against Sorceress Edea in the parade at Daling City. Just as it seems like our team might win, Edea hurls a pretty enormous icicle through Squall's chest. The next thing that happens in the game is he wakes up, exclaims that his wound is gone, and that he's absolutely fine. He is, and the fact that he survived such a serious injury is never referenced again. This theory suggests that Squall did in fact die at that point in the story, and everything that follows is a sort of dream or vision from beyond the grave. Squall's spirit is rewriting reality as he wishes it would have been, and neatly answering all the questions that he had in life. And you know, there's actually some decent evidence, if you want to call it that, to support this. The tonal switch from relative realism into a more cartoonish fantasy from the end of Disc 1 onwards. The fact that everything centres around Squall's point of view, including his and Renoa's relationship, which up until his death wasn't really on the cards. But it's only towards the end of the game that we get some other hints when some pretty weird stuff starts to happen. Squall is lost in time while fighting Ultimacia and starts to see some very strange visions. Is that because this entire life flashing before his eyes vision is coming to an end as his real body dies? There's a montage including a lot of shots of things Squall saw in those last moments before and after he was hit by the icicle. And then of course there's the hellish shot of Squall sans his face, which really is one of the creepiest visuals ever to have graced a game where you battle giant monsters and float through space, to be honest. This theory is likely just a theory, but it is a pretty fun one. And as an added bonus, it sure does explain away a lot of Final Fantasy VIII's gaping plot holes and contrivances, doesn't it? Speaking of plot holes though, let's never show that shot of Squall Leonhardt's face again, thanks. Yeah, cool. Don't want any more nightmares.
And that's the 9 darkest urban legends in gaming.
If you enjoyed the video, thanks very much. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to Eurogamer, and follow us on Instagram at Team Eurogamer for daily updates about our YouTube channel and our videos and streams.
Now, if you'll excuse all of us, we're gonna go look at some nice pictures of ducklings or something. See you next time.